reports of sexual assault in the military have jumped 46% in 2013. One other big number that came in, General Odierno released a study that showed that to set up a separate prosecution for sexual assault cases, you're looking at a whopping $113 million a year, which includes salaries for up to 600 attorneys and support staff. That is, if the military takes sexual assault prosecutions out of the chain of command. This is Michael Waddington with the Military Law News Network, and today I'm joined with Timothy Bilecki. Tim, what are your thoughts on this 46% increase in reports in 2013 alone?
Mike, it's wild. 46% increase? Seriously, 46% increase. Are you telling me that in the military we have added nearly 50% of individuals who now are sexually assaulting and raping women? It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous, Mike. What it shows is that we are over-prosecuting the hell out of sexual assaults, and individuals are getting the message that if you want to get out of the military, you want an honorable discharge, you want to be coddled, make an allegation of sexual assault because we'll believe you, no matter how ridiculous it is. I find it absurd and obscene to think that in the military we have 50%, nearly 50% more rapists in the military in 2003 than 2012. These numbers speak for themselves. They're ridiculous, Mike. I don't buy it. I don't believe the hype. It shows that we're over-prosecuting service members and that there are false allegations of sexual assault being made right and left. These numbers should be screaming out to commanders and congresspeople that saying something is wrong here. No other society in history that I am aware of, and I know you are also a scholar of history, Mike, has shown an increase in a crime, whether it be a sexual assault or any crime of violence, saying increasing it 50% in 12 months. Think about that just for a second and how ridiculous that is. That's my tell like it is comment, Mike.
Tim, I completely agree with you. That is a shocking increase in sexual assault reports, and you kind of have to wonder what's behind that. Well, possibly what's behind that is this army of victim advocates that are throughout the world now teaching people that if you have one beer, like we've been talking about this before, if you have one beer and one drink and you do something you regret, or the new thing is this, if you have one beer or one drink or two beers or two drinks and you make a, quote, bad decision then you wouldn't possibly have made if you were sober, then you are a victim of sexual assault. And you know what? I had that in a case that I did this week at Norfolk Navy Base, where one of the government's star witnesses kept talking about how the girl, the alleged victim, had a couple drinks, and after she had a couple drinks, she was making what he considered to be not good decisions that she wouldn't have made if she was sober, and therefore she could not consent. And that was his analysis that he was telling the investigating officer, which is ludicrous. And it turns out this person doesn't drink at all and has never really been around drunk people. So my point is that you take normal behavior between consenting adults and you educate people and tell them that behavior, if you regret what you did or you feel bad about it or you wish you didn't do it, it's not your fault. You're a victim. It's not your fault if you did something you regretted, because you really wouldn't have done that if the circumstances would have been different. You're a victim, and by the way, if you're a victim, you can get an honorable discharge. You're going to get full disabilities because you have PTSD now because of this traumatic event, and you're going to you can change duty stations, you can get out of deployments, you can be set for the rest of your life right now. If you make an allegation, it could be the biggest lie, false allegation. Or you could just say, I think I've been assaulted. That's enough to start an investigation, a court-martial, and that's enough to get you PTSD diagnosis and benefits for life. And we see it happening all the time.
I want to bring something up you said. I just did a trial 2 weeks ago out in Korea, It was a sexual assault trial, and we're doing our jury selection known as voir dire. And I believe there were 2 or 3 members of 12 that sat on that jury that said they had specific training that if you have one drink, female has one drink, they cannot consent. And these were senior officers, senior enlisted, who were buying into it, who said they agreed with it, and that's what the Army, this was in the Army, what the Army was teaching. And so if you have one drink, one drop of alcohol, you can't consent. And as I'm picking the jury, I'm using an example saying, what if I go out to Morton's with my wife and have a glass of wine, and afterwards we have sex? She just has a glass of wine. Well, I guess I've successfully then raped my spouse because we had a glass of wine together. But they're buying it, and they believe this. And I don't know, I'm asking, where's the common sense coming in? And so senior officers and senior enlisted are believing this. What's happening at the lower level with the junior enlisted, who are getting told week after week after week, one drink equals no consent? It's crazy, Mike. And so the question becomes, if a female drinks and a male soldier drinks, why isn't it that the female is charged with sexual assault because the male soldier can't consent as well? That just kind of goes to logic if we go down this approach, but it doesn't happen that way. So going back to these ridiculous numbers, the ridiculous numbers are, hey, perhaps if you consider a sexual assault 2 people having sex after having a glass of wine together, yeah, then maybe 46% more people have had sex after having a glass of wine or having a drink. But that's not sexual assault, Mike. You know that, and I know that, and anyone who's been through the system knows that. And if you haven't been through the system, you haven't gone and seen a court-martial and seen the ridiculous facts that are getting taken to trial, then you don't know what you're talking about. And this notion of 46% more sexual assaults have occurred in the military is ludicrous.
Tim, we're looking at a complete double standard. The law is applied differently in the military right now by very chauvinistic leaders who feel that they have to protect every single, if you're a female, then you're not equal to a male. This is how a lot of these people think. We need to protect you, you young ladies. You can't make decisions for yourself. You can't have a drink of alcohol. You can't choose to have sex. And we all know that women consent to have sex all the time. I mean, there are billions of people on this planet, okay? And this idea that just because you're female, you can't drink, you can't choose to have sex, you can't enjoy sex, you can't have multiple sexual partners, like many people in the military, many females in the military have multiple consensual partners, sexual partners. But that's not the way that the leadership sees it, because a lot of these leaders see women as people that need to be protected, which is it's not true. Everybody deserves the right to not be assaulted, obviously. But this idea that you have to go around protecting people because they're inferior or they're not as strong, I think is an insult to women in general. And
I can agree with you more, Mike. It's insulting. Not only is it insulting to women in general, it should be insulting to the general public to say we are spending the limited money and resources on sexual assault, and they're growing and growing it all the time in the military. But they take these cases to trial that should never go to trial, and there are sexual assault victims out there. I've said that from the beginning. The military does have people who sexual assault people. It's not the numbers that they claim, but the military needs to focus its time, its effort, and its resources on prosecuting those who actually have committed a sexual assault where there's good evidence, there's facts that should go to trial, and not take every single case where you had one glass of wine, one beer in the villa out in Korea, made a decision to have sex, and now it's going to trial. It is a travesty it's an injustice. It's a waste of resources, and the acquittal rates get higher and higher and higher, and we don't understand why. But Mike, I want to go back to something you said earlier about the money. And you've been saying this for months, Mike, but this is driven by money. It's driven by job security. A lot of it is. These victim advocates, these individuals who talk and they teach on sexual assault, the ones who, the hypocrites who on a Friday afternoon will give a sharp training class saying one drink of alcohol equals no consent, probably go home, have a drink, and have sex with their husbands or their wives. They need jobs. And without sexual assaults, without prosecutions, they don't have a job. And so a lot of this is self-perpetrated because of the need for job security, that they get paid. They need to go preach that sexual assaults occur, that one drink equals no consent. and it's financially motivated for themselves. You've been saying this for a long time. You have a lot of critics of yourself for saying that, but I completely agree with you, Mike. So damn the critics, because this is what's happening day in and day out in the trenches.
Tim, this is interesting that, I have come under a lot of attacks. When I travel around the world and go to these military bases, it's not uncommon for me to go into the courtroom and the SJ. Not every time, because some of them are professional, but many times I go into the courtroom and all of the victim advocates, the SJ staff, some of the prosecutors, and all their little paparazzi are literally staring me down, talking trash on me. And they've seen a lot of these videos. They've watched a lot of the videos we've done, and they hate us, okay? Because we speak what we believe to be the truth and what I think is the truth. Now, going back to what I was saying about money, as the military draws down, our government is on the verge of they shut down a month ago, couldn't pay their employees. They're going broke. What they're doing is they're scaling down the military. People are losing jobs. Now, General Odierno came out with released this study and commented on it, where this new program that all of these victim advocates are pushing for is going to create 600 positions, 600 lawyer jobs around the world, and that also includes paralegal and other staff. And what are those 600 lawyers in this new independent program going to run? Now, their original estimate is $113 million additional $million a year. That's $113 million in legal salaries and support salaries. That's a lot of money for a system, for creating a new system when we already have the system in place. And that's one of the reasons that the general, aside from eroding good order and discipline and the power of the command, that's one of the reasons that the General Odierno is against taking and creating this new system. Because we don't, Tim, let me tell you something. I was at Mountain Home Air Force Base about 2.5 months ago, doing a court-martial. There were no jets in the sky except for the jets. I believe it was the Singapore government's fighter jets. All of the American jets were grounded. Now, this is a forward air base. It's up in the northwestern United States. It's the tip of the spear in the event of a Soviet invasion or a North Korean air invasion, and we didn't have gas for our planes because we had no money. Okay, that's scary to me as a U.S. citizen, and most people wouldn't know that unless they were there. All jets grounded. That's going on around the world, not just with jets being grounded, tanks being kept in the tank yard, no gas for Humvees, no bullets for our weapons, and now they want to take $113 additional million to create 600 new lawyer jobs. You cannot tell me that this isn't about creating jobs. And it's creating jobs for lawyers, Tim. It's not creating jobs for other people. They're actually firing a ton of people out of the military right now using all sorts of shady tactics, but the lawyers are the ones behind that as well. So we have the lawyers creating jobs for lawyers and then getting rid of the rest of the military. What are we going to have in the next 10 years? An army of nothing but lawyers, it seems to me, and victims.
Mike, you raise a great point. I saw this a couple weeks ago when I was out in Korea again. I was talking to soldiers out there who were saying because of the budget restrictions, they're not training, that they don't have money to do anything, that there's not training. They can't do the majority of their mission because there's no money. I'm hearing that from soldiers on the ground there, and at the same time, the government flew in over 24, I believe it was nearly 24 witnesses. They flew in from around the world to take on this garbage sexual assault case, a case that probably should never have gone to trial, but they're spending nearly $100,000 of money when they don't have enough money for the troops to train. There was one instance we caught a CID agent perjuring herself on the witness stand. She perjured herself. There's no question about it. And we had witnesses who would basically say that she perjured herself. In order to overcome that, the government flew out one of her friends, who was also a CID agent, from the mainland at probably a cost of nearly $10,000. I'm estimating here, probably $10,000. Got her on a plane the next day, put her up on TDY to testify for 5 minutes to say that her friend, another CID agent, had a reputation for truthfulness. So I'm watching my taxpayer dollars, your taxpayer dollars, that America's taxpayer dollars get pissed away in these trials But the troops right down the street, also on base, don't have the money they need to train. This is about money. It's a waste of resources. We need to get back to taking the cases that actually merit trial in sexual assault, take those cases to trial, zealously advocate for them, and have some discretion, because it's just not there in the military anymore, and people are blindly prosecuting these cases, blindly throwing money the government doesn't have, and yet they wonder why they can't win trials.
Hey, Tim, I'm going to one-up you there, buddy. I was at Travis Air Force Base in California just last week. I was doing a special court-martial jury trial, and the key evidence in that case was some photographs, okay? Well, guess what? The government could not afford, according to the people in the JAG office, could not afford a color printer. What's a color printer going to cost? Like $200 to $300. They couldn't afford a color printer because of budget cuts. However, they flew 2 civilian expert witnesses who probably charged about $20,000 apiece plus travel, including one for us. Neither one of the witnesses testified. So that's $40,000 plus probably another $5,000 in travel. That's $45,000 for 2 civilian psychologists to sit in court. And then they also flew out 2 additional expert witnesses that had to do with emergency room techniques and things like that, and child abuse. Neither one of them testified either. They just sat there. And in the end, it was a full acquittal, full not guilty verdict. And the problem was, because they couldn't afford a color printer, they had to take some other money and go to Kinko's and do it that way. And it ended up costing them like $70 to make these photographs at Kinko's. And it turned out that the photographs were all jacked up. The shadows were all mixed up, and they were basically useless to the panel. And anyway, Tim, I would say that in that case alone, I saw, aside from the whole court-martial being a waste, but in that case alone, we're looking at about $50,000 in expert witness fees when not a single one of those witnesses, fees and expenses, not a single one of those witnesses testified.
You know, Mike, what to say, money's easy to spend when it's not yours, and there really should be some oversight in these JAG offices and these trial counsel, these SVPs and SJAs, and how they're spending their money. Like I said, money's real easy to spend when it's not yours, and the fact that we are spending money on these garbage sexual assault cases when troops don't have money to train it's beyond me. This shows how ridiculous this system has gotten.
Tim, I want to say something. If this bill passes and they do set up a new prosecutor's office, I predict that court-martials are going to go through the roof. You're going to see 2 to 3 times as many court-martials, and the reason is, if you set up an office with 600 lawyers and professional legal staff, allocate $113 million, and you know they're going to spend much more than $113 million if they set this up. It's going to always go over budget.
You need business.
They're going to need business to justify those 600 jobs, and who's going to suffer? The taxpayers, but most importantly, the people that are being falsely accused of sexual assault and being railroaded are going to really suffer, as well as people that weren't really victims that are being told, no, you're a victim, you have to go through this. That's a very traumatic process when someone really wasn't a victim, to force them into a court-martial, to be publicly humiliated, and then to get a not guilty verdict. So there's more than one victim here, and if this thing goes forward the way that they have it planned.
Well, I just hope that General Odierno has his way and this doesn't go forward, because, like I said, if you fund it, you've got to have the cases to justify it. So we're just going to see an explosion in the court-martial business and sexual assault more than we're even seeing now. So I really hope that common sense does prevail and this doesn't go forward. I'm just hoping right now. I have simple needs, simple hopes that garbage cases don't go forward and the innocent service members aren't charged and eventually convicted. I'm asking for that. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm hoping that this ridiculous bill does not pass, because if they do it, Mike, they're going to have to justify it. The only way they're going to justify it is with more court-martial cases and more sexual assault charges. So to be determined, we'll see. But I certainly hope this doesn't go forward, because once again, it's all about the money, not about the victims. But that's all the time we have for this particular episode of the Military Law News Network. Keep your comments coming in. We love to hear from you. We love to hear what topics that you want to hear about, and we certainly like your comments, criticisms, and however you feel on it. And your view certainly is important. So for Mike Waddington and Tim Bilecki on the Military Law News Network, take care.